What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. So today we've got the E30 out and we're going to be going over some of the build plans and some of the goals that we have for the E30. We're also going to be covering things that are wrong with it and some stuff that I want to address. And I also want some opinion from you guys, the subscribers and followers, on what I should do. I'm super new to the BMW scene. This is my first one, my first E30, and I just want to know what you guys think are the best modifications that I should do and some things that I should address first when restoring this car. So getting started with it, I'm going to go around the outside of the car and kind of talk about what's wrong with the exterior, and then we'll kind of go into the engine and underneath the car. So starting at the front of the E30, obviously the paint is starting to come off on the hood, the clear coat's coming off. We've got a little bit of rusting on the front of the bumper, some oxidation on the front bumper, kind of the fender. We got a little dent here, some scratches, and obviously the clear coat's starting to come off on the rear quarter. We got this big dent on the rear quarter as well. The car he like rolled and backed into something here, so like it's kind of dented in here in this corner, and the rear bumper's cracked. The spoiler is like all cracked. It's kind of weird because it's like rubberized. So I'm not really sure. I've never really seen one like this, but I kind of want to get a painted one. The rear trunk is obviously oxidized and faded. Same with the rear bumper. We got no clear coat on this side. It's just a flat red. The roof is surprisingly pretty good. There is no like dents or anything up here. It's mostly just like a round, the kind of like door ding area that you would see on the car. There's a little bit of rust here on this fender down here. Other than that, that's pretty much it for the front of the car, or that's pretty much it for the outside of the car, as far as like the things that need to be fixed. Nothing like super urgent, so I've been kind of just leaving it, not really stressing on it too much, because I kind of want to get the car mechanically sound first. So going over kind of the engine. Oh, I love the way the hood opens, it's so sick. Going over the engine bay, it's obviously faded in here. There's obviously a lot of dust and debris and whatnot. We do have some rust in some areas on some of the hardware. There's like a little hole right there, kind of by the washer reservoir. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like over there, it's starting to crack open. The engine itself is the original motor. I did a compression test on it, and it did 100 to 105 across all the cylinders, and that was a cold test. And then when I did a wet test right after, it only went up about 10 points. So the engine is pretty tired. I don't think the rings are going out, but I do think that I'm losing some compression there. Overall, the car runs pretty smooth. It does not overheat on me at all. In fact, it actually runs a little bit cooler, so I think I may need to replace the thermostat here pretty soon. We do have typical oil leaks on the front of the engine. Not exactly sure where it's coming from. I want to say it's probably the two little like blocks that go in when you replace the valve cover gasket, but haven't really looked too much into that. Just been kind of enjoying the car for what it is, and until I can afford to either pull the motor and do like a full rebuild, which we'll get into a little bit later into the video. As for the suspension in the car, it's pretty worn out. It is the original suspension, front and rear. The car is on H&R lowing springs, I believe, which doesn't really look like it. This kind of just looks like a stock ride height. But in fact, for the iXs, this is lowered. The brakes are clearly shot on this side. You can see the ridges on the rotors there. Definitely need to be swapping out the brakes front and rear. They're starting to go out. I did end up getting some wheels on the car and some sticky tires, which help make the car a lot more fun to drive, since we're not running those like super fat sidewalled OEM wheels and tires. Underneath the car is where a lot of the issues are. As you can see, I did that little exhaust modification, but everything under here is like completely rusted and needs to be addressed. There's like caked on like road salt on everything. It's kind of hard to tell. Essentially everything underneath the car is completely rusted. There's some holes in the floor pan on both sides. There is some rusting going on the sunroof with the brackets that hold the sunroof in, and most of the bushings underneath the car are cracked, worn, and or leaking. So all those need to be replaced. So it's going to be quite a project to get all that stuff refreshed and back to kind of OEM standard or better. So now that you know kind of what we're working with here on the E30, I really want to know what you guys think that I should do first. In my opinion, I want to kind of get the car driving a lot better before I start working on a lot of the aesthetic aspects of the E30. So recently I did order quite a bit of parts for the rear end of the car because right now the center diff doesn't work. I do have a spare one at home that does work. I just haven't put it in the car yet. But I plan on basically restoring the rear end of the car first. So I've ordered new CV boots for both rear axles, a full rebuild kit for the rear differential, new fluids, and I plan on also doing all of the rear subframe bushings after that. And these are all going to be in separate in-depth videos to show you guys the process along the way. After I finish up the rear, I want to move over to the front, and I want to do new control arms, new bushings up front, kind of get the steering fixed because it's super loose. So I want to do new tie rods, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, hopefully the engine is still holding up. Then I'd like to do a restoration on the motor. And I would like to basically just rebuild it for what it is as an M20, possibly do a little bit of upgrades, do like ARP head studs, do a proper MLS gasket, as well as possibly different pistons or rods, depending on what I find on the research online. I'm not totally sure what goes into rebuilding these M20s and what kind of the weaker points are. I know that the head gasket is one of those, as well as the head studs, so I do plan on replacing those for sure. The goal for the engine, as like starting out with the build for the car, I do want to turbo it. I'd like to slap on kind of a smaller little turbo just to get like maybe up to 10 or 12 PSI and get like 300, 350 wheel out of the car on pump. That's kind of the first overall goal that I want to do for power with this car. So I kind of just want to know your guys' suggestions on what I should do to the M20 in order to get to that standard to be able to boost the car. After that, I would like to address the brakes and suspension because this thing is super soft. So I'd like to kind of put some sort of coilover system on the car. Overall, I've been looking at the ground control system. It seems like it's a very reputable company and good product that I think would fit the iX pretty well. And they do sell a kit to fit the iXs, which is kind of hard to find. So I think I'm most likely going to go with ground control suspension. As far as the brakes, overall, I've only found Willwood is like the most common big brake kit to put on the car. I'm not sure if I want to go that far just yet, but I will be freshening up the brakes with new rotors and pads and stainless steel lines at least. Now moving on to the exterior of the car, there's quite a bit you can do to these things to make them look more modern and way more aggressive. So I do want to most likely run a lower offset wheel since these things kind of sit into the car a little bit. But I do like them for now. I think they look good and they kind of fit the car. I would like to add possibly a different style wing in the rear. And obviously we're gonna fix the rear bumper and all that, but I do kind of want to paint that and get that looking a little bit cleaner. I think that with these multiple black lines across the rear, the black plastic bumper, and then the bottom line here is all black along the rear bumper as well, or underneath the car. I kind of want to paint that all red just so it blends in a lot better. And I'm kind of curious if there's any sort of diffuser or something that I can put back there to kind of go along with the iX's factory wide body fenders and side skirts. I'm also considering blacking out the window trim just because the aluminum doesn't really go with a lot of the color scheme of this car. The rear window already has black trim around it, so it's kind of confusing on what they were going with here. As far as the front end of the car, I think it would be cool to kind of do some sort of hood vents over here when there is a turbo or something going on there, just to kind of stand out a little bit. As for the front of the car, I do want to freshen up the front as well. I think I need to get some sort of front lip in order to make the front of the car look a lot lower to match with the side. So if I could find a nice front lip that would be paint matched or black to fit underneath the front bumper there, that would be pretty sweet. I also want to do the really cool intake that everyone else does, where they have like a hole here and it's just like the intake. I think those are super sweet, but it'll probably have to go on that side because that's where the turbo will be. But I think that's pretty much it for the car. I don't really have any crazy goals for it. Long term, I think maybe like an OEM, like M3 wide body would be pretty sweet. But then again, that seems like a lot more work than I think I want to put into the car at the moment. So we're just going to take baby steps. We're going to go along the way and kind of do little things here and there just to freshen up the car, make it a little bit better. Basically make it a fun little OEM plus Canyon cruiser. So with all that being said, now you understand what the goal is for the E30 and kind of what I want to do with it. Let me know down in the comment section below what mods you guys think I should do first as far as suspension or performance modifications for the E30, because I'm going to be doing those here and there along the way. As well as make sure to tag any other E30 channels out there. I would love to see other people's builds and to see what they have going on with their E30.